Well, I've had the good fortune and pleasure to work with Juan for the last couple of decades or so. I work with a river conservation group here in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains called Protect American River Canyons. And we wanted to develop some art programs in the canyons, specifically watercolors classes. And so Juan agreed to teach some classes down by the river.
We showed you the option of using one sheet of watercolor paper and using any size you are comfortable with. You'll need 16 clips and one extra if you want. Using a 24 by 30 tempered masonite board, you had the option of working along with Juan as he demonstrates on his 4 sheets of paper. My simple design formula: dominant, subordinate, and incidental. Everything that we do is ruled by dominant, subordinate, and incidental. Using the ground planes as examples, you may add the magic formula to good design to each plane. And you discovered that the incidental can dominate a painting. We prepared you for lesson 6 by mixing temperature into sepia, using our red and yellow and blue to add temperature to sepia. Started using my round brush with the John Pike end for scraping, and I will scrape. We'll start with a wet into wet process and make one a dominant dark. So with my sepia and blue mixed together, I'll proceed with the background, laying in a good dark color. Put a little more blue into our mixture for the water. I have 2 waters, one for cleaning my brush and one for drawing clean water. Mix into your yellow first, then your red, and then your sepia, making a warm sepia. And I'll place a warm sepia at the top here. We don't have to worry about paint running into each other or brush strokes at this stage, because this is the wet into wet stage. And I can use that color with our sepia, mixing it slightly with the background and bringing it down to our wet sand area. Wet sand area is this little area that I'm blocking in now, and I can warm a little bit more of the wet sand as we come forward here and neutralize the sand towards the back with a little more sepia. Now, don't be afraid of your color running. As before, I demonstrated how we can eliminate washes that run down with just plain water, and our Kleenex. So we can go into the, probably this is a good time to do that, these areas, and wash out our areas, lifting out some of the color with just plain water, and then taking our Kleenex and removing it from other areas as well. Just plain water, we'll remove that, and our Kleenex. Be sure and use the clean part of your Kleenex. I can come back with a little more warm color for the rest of our beach area. And remember, in watercolor, it dries 20 shades lighter than when you first apply it. So if you want it to remain dark, you can add more pigment that you want while it's wet. Add more pigment to areas a little darker. And to our surf area, I'll add a lot of blue into our sepia for this area. And since I blotted this area out with my Kleenex or paper towel, it will have a nice hard edge to that area. But as you approach what has already been painted on, try to avoid that area, otherwise it'll bleed into this area. And because I'm working upright, I'm going to have lots of things running down, and it seems like it's out of control, but actually those are wonderful watercolor effects. And we'll come back to that a little bit later. We'll establish a neutral sepia, just sepia, for our rock area. And I'll block that in right now. All of this is pretty much the underpainting to what is to follow. Whatever happens, as far as I'm concerned, these areas can be fixed at a later date. This is watercolor. Let watercolor happen. On this panel, what I'll do is demonstrate the wet into wet with lighter colors, or a dominant light. So these are going to be light colors, starting with my warm at the top, and then a cool connected to that, a little more blue around our rock area. I don't want a cool over our rock. I want that to remain fairly neutral. And parts of this have started to dry, so we have a chance for wet into wet plus dry brush. So the dry brush helps us get ragged and rough edges. And again, remember, this all will dry lighter. We can add some water and paint with water. After all, this is a dominant light that we want. And we can start with our beach scene, adding cool to the warm, neutralizing our beach in the background. As our beach comes forward, we can add a little more warmth to it. Add just plain water. To lighten it coming forward. And our dry sand can start out lighter in the background and get darker and more intense here as it comes forward. So it's just the opposite of what we've done other part of the beach. While it's drying, we don't want to go back into an area and destroy the drying capabilities of the color. While it's wet, you can add more pigment, but you don't want to add more water or liquefied color. You can only do that while it's still very wet. Like what I'm doing right now, I'm just adding a little bit of water to lighten this end of the rock, and I'm using straight sepia in these rocks. And as it runs into other washes, allow it to happen. Now, what I want along this edge and this edge is a little bit of cool, because the reflective light on rocks at the ocean is very cool. Now, when the water starts to run into another wash, I allow it to happen, and later we can fix some of those. This will be our dominant light value.